Hey there, guys, it's Debbie Potts, and I want to do a short video today to just go over something I did many videos on in the past year on how to fuel, train, and perform your best as an endurance athlete. Low carb athlete is a podcast, doesn't mean zero carbs, but sometimes it is more about what type of carbs you are eating, real food, and when you're eating them. And we call it strategic carb timing. But I wanted to dive into some information on how to test and not guess your fueling plan and performance plan, how to pace yourself during exercise, as I start doing metabolic testing again in North San Diego. So I've gone through a little recap of my background. You can learn more on my website, debbiepotts.net, that I moved. I'm recording this almost on our 3-year anniversary when we moved from Bellevue, Washington 3 years ago, June 19th, 2020, and moved to North San Diego. Just was ready to find a little different lifestyle, quality of life. And I love the mountains, but I also love the ocean, and I love to be outdoors, not just one season of the year. So anyways, we moved to North San Diego. You can often find me in Solana Beach. I swim the master's program there at lunchtime, a few days a week. And I'm often running along the coast in La Jolla or Carlsbad or Encinitas. I was at Moonlight Beach today, running north or south on the coastline. On Sundays, I'm biking around Elfin Forest, Lake Hodges, or going up north to Temecula and riding in the areas that good hill climbing and not a lot of cars is my favorite place to ride. But I used to race and found my love is still to do endurance training, even though it's not ideal for us. So we want to make sure that we are working on training the whole athlete from the inside out. I used to do Ironmans. 2012 was the last year I did Ironman Hawaii. Let me go back here. I started doing low carb started doing Ironmans in 2001, but I'm trying to go back when I started realizing carbs were more evil to me. It's more that it's like crack if I have bread. I just was with people on the low carb cruise last week, and I realized I'm low carb, not just for performance, because we'll go in today about training your body to have fat fuel tank as the main fuel tank and carbohydrate as your glycogen stores as your backup fuel tank. But me personally, I dieted a lot growing up in college. I lost a lot of weight, too much weight, got too into dieting and counting calories and working on that whole diet cycle, as you do often when you're in high school, maybe not everyone, but I did. And really learning that I have bagels in college. I used to think that they're so healthy. Fat was bad back then when I was in school. I graduated from high school, to give you perspective what year that was, 1989. And in college, that was a time when, I did everything fat-free. I didn't do fat, and I really didn't eat much protein. So I was on the high carb diet. And as I started to exercise, and I was always active doing aerobics back then and tried to get into running, but I gained a lot of weight. I was really skinny freshman year in college, got down too low of weight, and then I just ballooned up in the next year. So I was probably screwed up my metabolism in some way, not eating and then eating just bagels. And that's what I lived off of college. And we had air pop popcorn with water sprayed on it and Johnny's seasoning salt. And I ate just that sticky rice, and I had that gross chicken, Costco chicken, and Yoshida's teriyaki sauce. That's what I lived off of. So I was on the high carb diet. And then I started post college getting into running short races. And then I got into Ironman triathlon in 2001. But during that time, I started exploring with the zone diet and started realizing that, carbs, having a bagel and orange juice, as I was a personal trainer back then, I would be hungry all the time. So carbs for me not even just processed carbs, but carbs in general, just for my body, my type O blood type, I don't do well. I'll eat all day long. If I have bread, I can't just have good bread and just have one piece. I'll eat the whole thing and not be full. So I learned a long time ago, carbs are not my friends. And I look at genetic tests, I'm not very good with my carb tolerance. So there is a reason that I need to be avoiding carbs unless I want to be a giant overweight person, because I just can't get full and I'll overeat. So for me, low carb, that's one reason, because I will binge on the carbs without knowing it. So I'm better to eat more high fat and protein. So fast forward to today, I've learned a lot. I went from, the high carb, non-fat, everything, no protein in there back in my early days, my 20s. And then in my 40s, I started getting into low carb in the zone diet, and then started to go lower carb and doing the high fat about 2007, 2009. And anyways, over the past few years, I think last 10 years, I got into doing too much fat, not enough protein, and too low carb from activity level as an endurance athlete competing in Ironman and marathons and 50K trail runs. I was doing a lot. And then I was teaching classes. I was moving all over. So I was probably burning a ton of calories. So it might not that I wasn't eating carbs. It was that I wasn't eating enough calories. So it was more that low energy availability causing stress on my body by doing just too much of everything. And then I began racing at a competitive level when I started doing Ironmans in 2001. I really got into it until my body broke down and burned out from too much of everything in my life. Part of it was owning my own fitness studio and that constant stress of paying the bills, and which I'm experiencing that constant stress now as I start my new metabolic testing job. So this is kind of why I want to dive into this, because I'm prone to, I think, chronic stress issues because I get worked up easily and I need to manage my stress. So I have learned the Goldilocks effect, not too much of everything. Sometimes less is more. It's an N=1 experiment, an ongoing journey. As I said, I got into low carb, high fat early on before it was keto. I got into 1 meal a day fasting type of protocol without knowing it was OMAD back then. I got into just eating fat and not protein and being just too much of everything in the keto world and not prioritizing protein, as we know we need just as much as our healthy fats nowadays. And even before that, I must add in backtrack. I didn't eat meat. I ate pretty much just chicken because I just don't like eating animals. But I used to, in my head since high school, got over eating just chicken was a vegetable. It was not an animal. And turkey, if I didn't see where it's from. And then I ate fish if it wasn't with the head and tail and everything. It was like a piece of salmon. So long story short, another time, I started eating red meat when I was on the low carb cruise and went to KetoCon in Austin, Texas, 2019. So it's only been 4 years I've been eating steak. And I still went to the grocery store today, husband out of town. I can't buy steak, raw meat, unless it's just ground beef and make that. But the whole raw meat stuff, I still can't do. But I feel better when I have a steak, and I'm not venturing out into eating different animals as that. Like I'm not going to have goat, sheep, lamb, whatever, rabbits, squirrels. I'm just going to stick with my steak. I like a ribeye steak. So anyways, this constant journey and experimenting what works best for my body, my unique genetics and my gut health, my level of stress, my lifestyle, my sleep. It is me. That's going to be me evaluating what works. Okay. So variation, mixing it up, positive attitude, positive mindset, positive vibes is a really important part, especially if I'm more prone to getting stressed out about things. I need to come back to taking a time out, do some breathing exercises, record a podcast, let it out, journaling, manifesting some things, and then learning to your intuition, knowing when to push pause and reset. As I've had to do a lot this past week. After the cruise, the low carb conference, I was really exhausted. I went really busy every day, working out in the morning, going to a conference and dinner, and then we had a session at night. I was exhausted. So you have to know what works best for you. Okay, so I was doing low carb for a long time. Again, I started doing Ironmans 2001 and stopped racing 2012 in the last Ironman, even though I tried 2013 and then 2015. I broke my body down, burned it out from chronic stress, metabolic chaos. It's just created this downhill spiral of multiple things. So I was doing too much fasting, I'm sure. I was doing too low calories, maybe probably for sure not enough protein, and maybe too much fat. And I was doing metabolic efficiency testing that I will go into in 2005. And I was very good at burning fat at exercise because I started doing heart rate training way back in 2001 and worked with Sally Edwards, who created Heart Zone training in 2005 when I started working at the Bellevue Club, teaching classes, heart rate classes with her with Dan Skin Triathlon. So anyways, metabolic flexibility is important, but knowing if you're a fat burner, carb burner, is what I'm doing metabolic testing clients now. So fasted exercise, go back and find the videos on fasted exercise, because I think this is such a huge topic that women are different than men. And sometimes we may improve performance by eating a little something beforehand. If I look at it as what I did the day before. So there's a lot to it, if to eat or not to eat before a workout. Now I eat, but it's a coffee with just some heavy cream. Or if I'm going longer, I might add some MCT and have some creatine in it, as well as some collagen. So it depends on the duration of my workout, what time of day I'm starting it. And I'm not as strict as I used to be because I'm trying to experiment with my fueling plan and performance. Am I going really strong, feeling great and full of energy? Then that worked. If I recovered really well from the workout, if I feel good. So there's a lot to it. So that's why I do personalized coaching and experiment. So you want to work on foundations, as I call the holistic method. Even if you are doing your swim, bike, run, whatever type of workouts you do for endurance or HIIT training, you want to make sure you have your foundations taken care of. You're doing earthing, grounding, walking barefoot on the grass or in the sand or dirt. I'm drinking mineral water. I like Redmond's real salt all over my food. I put LMNT unsweetened into my water bottles all day long. And I get out in the sunlight first thing in the morning and get up and get outside and work out. So really check on if you're taking care of the whole you with the holistic method. How you're eating is really important. Go into all this, and fasted exercise, I'm not going to go into as much. But just to note, when you should do a fasted exercise is if you're doing a zone 1 workout, zone 2. If you're doing a tempo or like a zone 3, we call it tempo 10, 20-minute pieces. If you're doing high intensity interval training, you may need to experiment with fueling, and performance is important. But I can do a lot of things fasted and feel fine if I ate something the night before. But then it goes, again, individual schedule, because a lot of times I was not eating after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I think I wasn't eating enough again. So I have to always reevaluate is what you are doing now, is it working for you? And sometimes less is more. Again, we don't need to fast, especially cell autophagy. I'm finding we get the benefit of cell autophagy from exercise. So go back and find my ebook on debbiepots.net, all about this information. But today we're going to skip through all this and talk about not fasting, but metabolic efficiency testing. So as I just bought metabolic efficiency equipment called PNOE, P-N-O-E, I have the ability now to test people at rest, fasted state, ideally in the morning, and see what their metabolism is doing. And we're also analyzing the breath. And then I'm going to put them in an exercise test and measure what happens at different heart rates and what happens with their breathing and their fuel source. Okay, so common endurance problems, that's Fuel's founder, Leighton Phillips. You can listen to their interviews and videos on YouTube, and they have a great guide on their S Fuels website. Again, discount code low carb athlete, support the podcast. There's a lot of research on your fat oxidation rate when you're exercising and where to find your best training and racing heart rates, where you're burning the most fat, where your metabolic crossover point is, but how to fuel for that performance, if it's in just training or if it's racing, how to fuel. So they call it the right time, the right fuel. So, Leighton's story is similar to mine is, we used to eat the breads and the pastas and rice doing the high carb diet, but how many of us had GI issues in a race and try to fit in all these calories every hour like I did beginning my racing career, and I'd be throwing it all up instead on the bike ride on the side of the road. I was trying to follow the rules and they did not work for me. So that's when I started doing more low carb athlete training back, probably 2005, when I realized the rules I was following when I started Ironman 2001 was not working. The first few years, I kept trying all these different fuels and just would be throwing up all those liquids because they'd be sitting in my belly and I'd have this distended belly. And so I found more into the low carb approach as endurance athlete doing Ironmans. I learned a lot from Volek and Finney in the art and science of low carb performance. This kind of changed it all for me, and started reading about this all the time. That fuel tank, we have 40,000 to 80,000 of stored calories, and a carb fuel tank has 2,000 calories. And when I started reading this, I was also starting to do new leaf metabolic testing in 2005 on people, and really learning how to train people to burn fat and improve their fat burning. We did the Maffetone, max aerobic function heart rate, train that fat burning window so your metabolic crossover point didn't happen until later in your workout. So my last test I had when I was at my peak career, I was up to 167 heart rate, where I burned the most fat, and where my metabolic crossover, where you go from fat to carbs. So we're also measuring your VO2 peak and a bunch of other markers, but just to know, we're trying to find where you are training that body to burn the most fat, where you switch to carbohydrates and improve that metabolic flexibility. And then experiment with carb timing. When I'm doing testing, I'm doing a ramp test. It's 1 minute increments. It's 9 to 12 minutes. But a second test I'll do for my endurance athletes is, let's see what happens at different heart rates going a 5-minute stage, and do more of a longer workout and test what's happening at those 5-minute pace or stages. So Volek and Finney really changed my way of training people way back when in 2005. But the calories coming from your glycogen fuel tank, where you only have 2,000 stored calories versus 40,000, this has been around for a long time now. And I still see people doing a lot of carbs when they're training, working out. I hear them breathing heavy. I watched cyclists yesterday on my bike ride, and then I was running today, and I watched runners just go behind me, and they're huffing and puffing, and they're burning glycogen. You want to get faster and faster, where they're burning fat. So if you are doing everything right, quote on that, what are the right things and not getting results, is because you're trying to do that one size fits all approach. So listen to people as Volek and Finney, Peter Attia, Professor Noakes, Paul Larson, Phil Maffetone, and then I didn't add in here, of course, Endure IQ, Dr. Dan Plews. I learned lots from him, did his program last year. So really learning about that. Peter Defty of Optimal Fat Metabolism. We've done lots of podcasts with him, and learning about how Vespa can be important, as well as HVMN, Ketone IQ, having that in a workout to see how that helps. But really looking at what Peter says, that optimal fat metabolism is, not that carbs are evil, but where to place them so they are that backup fuel tank. We don't want to have adrenal stress and post-exercise soreness and GI issues and really slow recovery. And, you hear that bonking in the workout. It's not keto, it's being low carb, being really dependent on that fat metabolism, be flexible, that you can switch to that carb metabolism. I just listened to a great podcast yesterday with Dr. Dan Plews on Zach Bitter's podcast on how we don't want to be in nutritional ketosis when you're exercising. And I completely agree. I've never believed are understood, why would you need to be in nutritional ketosis while you're doing a long bike ride or run or race? Ketones, exogenous ketones, can help you improve performance, but is it necessary to be making ketones in your liver when you're exercising? No. Your liver, if it's too depleted of carbohydrates, it will search to make more fuel by breaking fatty acids into ketones, and ketones will fuel the brain, right? So we know that works. We have gluconeogenesis. We can make more glycogen. But if you are racing or doing a bike ride, Dr. Dan Plews verifies that it takes too long for that to happen. That works great if you're at rest, but during your workout or race, you don't want to be in nutritional ketosis. It's too slow of process. So great podcast to listen to. And I need to go write down the show notes of those key points he said. It's better to improve your strategic carb timing when you're racing. And if you are anaerobic and above that metabolic crossover point where we test you, during my Pinot metabolic testing, we will know if you need carbs, and it's 20 grams to 60 grams maximum per hour if you're doing an anaerobic workout. Zone 2, not necessary to me. So listen to Dr. Dan Plews, but this slide I just had up, if you're reading the slides and watching the video on YouTube, you'll see less is more. So that's with Rob Wolf going back to fasting. It's slides out of place, but the holistic method. You need to remember to work on all these elements when you're trying to be a fit and healthy athlete. If you are sitting all day, you don't have mobility, movement breaks, you need to move every hour. Exercising in the morning is great, or at lunchtime, evening, watch it out on your sleep, but fitting that in your nutrition. But if you're not prioritizing sleep, I don't know what you're doing, because that is where your recovery goes from your workouts. If you're not managing your stress, everything else on here is going to be messed up. If you're not prioritizing your digestion by getting in that parasympathetic state before you're eating, you're going to have poor gut health, and you're going to have dysbiosis and all these other indigestion problems and malnourishment, and not getting your amino acids from your protein. You're eating all this steak, but you're not breaking it down. So proper chewing, slowing down, being mindful when you eat. And then hydration, not just drinking plain water, but have LMNT. Use your code Low Carb Athlete to get a free variety pack when you order. And then Redmond's Real Salt. I put it all over my food. Everyone in our conference on the cruise had their own bottle, and we're passing around. Salt your food when you're low carb. You're not getting all that salt from the processed foods and the carbs, carbohydrates. Hydrate, they come with water. So we're not having as much, right? So happiness is really important too. So really important to train the whole you. Now, nutrition, what you eat, when, why, and how. Focusing on protein, we've been talking about. When you need to reboot and reset. Some people don't need a carb reset. Other people might, but I'm finding it depends on the individual where we are. If you're getting enough protein is what I'm finding no one's getting enough of. 100 grams or more a day. Eating 20, 40 grams per meal. Not fasting so much so we can hit those protein goals is what I've had to adjust my fasting window. So I'm focusing on protein, not fasting. So listen to Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. Her Lion Protocol is the muscle, their metabolic currency, important stuff. Great podcast too. So remember, research eating that 20 to 40 grams, maximum 50 grams, but then that might be different nowadays too. Every 3 to 4 hours, small advantage regarding muscle protein synthesis. So all that on this ebook I have on debbiepotts.net. So experiment, look at the science, read more, watch your vegetable oils, eat real food, get your protein and fat from healthy animal meats ideally. Okay, here's the main topic. Low carb athlete just means training your body to burn fat as your main fuel source at rest and during exercise. So this is what I'm testing. So if you could come to North San Diego, maybe the Bay Club, Carmel Valley is where I'm testing, I'm not sure. I can go to clubs, and hopefully everyone, cyclists and triathlon teams, will start doing this, because we need to know what our zones are so we can improve fat loss, improve performance, and longevity, your aging process. So metabolic flexibility is ability to use carbs as fuel source when we truly need them. We're designed to go for long periods without food and use fat as fuel. So fast and feast. We need fat and we need protein, but we don't need carbohydrates. But endurance athletes, when you're racing, going depleting the glycogen stores longer time, some athletes may perform better with that strategic carb timing, as Dr. Dan Plews and EndurIQ and S Fuels are saying, right fuel, right time. So this is what I test when I'm running my treadmill test or the bike or anything with watts, like an erg or assault bike, looking at where do you go heart rate wise and pace or watts, where you're burning zone 2 is where your peak fat max is. To the top of your zone 2 is this metabolic crossover point. And then zone 3 will be your longer intervals, zone 4, medium intervals, and zone 5 is your short intensity intervals, that SIT, short intensity or high intensity interval training. Zone 1 is below that peak fat burning and below that 10 to 15 beats under that number. So if you are doing zone 2, this is where we'll find, are you really doing zone 2? I think most people I see biking with people in a group, with a friend, running, they're running probably and biking in zone 3. I hear them breathing. They're not just comfortable, easy, I can stay here forever zone 2 pace. They're more in that dead man zone. So you want to make sure, are you doing zone 2? And then if you're doing speed work, that's great. We need more speed work and less chronic cardio. But speed work is zone 5, zone 4. And then you recover all the way down to zone 1. Stay there till you're there. 30 seconds to a minute. You can look at my Instagram for the pictures and that, but where that is for you, what number? For me, I need to hit like probably 165. I still need to get someone to test me on the treadmill, but I know above 160s, 165, but I need to get all the way back down to 110 heart rate before I do another short, intense sprint. So I need more speed work. We do need more zone 4, zone 5, less chronic cardio as we age. So that's what we're testing. And then fueling, this is where I work on the cyclical keto diet or targeted keto diet, or working on that strategic carb timing for clients based on their intensity of the workout. Women, we want to look at your ovulation versus luteal phase versus the follicular phase is a little different, right? So we're going to look at just healthy carbs are not eating crap. We're just adding some sweet potatoes and squash. I don't do whole grains. I have to avoid gluten, which means all wheat I avoid. And so the days you add in more carbs, I hate the word refeed because I feel like if you're a carb addict, that means like binge day. And it's not binge day. It's just, instead of nutritional ketosis is typically 20 to 50 grams of carbs. That is if you're metabolically unhealthy and doing nutritional ketosis, not being an athlete. If you're an athlete, Dr. Dan Plews says, 130 grams plus or minus for a male low carb athlete is somewhere in there. Some people can go a little higher. And so for a female, you have to experiment too. If you're 100 grams carbs to 200 grams, if you're doing more anaerobic workout, but looking at if we are luteal phase, we add in a little more carbs. So it goes, instead of 50 grams, Dr. Mindy Pelz will say, go up to 100 grams of carbs, 150. We're not going to standard American diet of 300 to 500 grams of carbohydrates a day. So take note when we say, add in some carbs doesn't mean a ton. It just means have your dinner with some sweet potatoes or russet potatoes. It's really good with some bacon. And if you can do dairy, have some goat cheese on there and have some protein. So Dr. Dan Plews and EndurIQ can learn a lot. So decreasing carb dependence. So there's a phase we go through to get you to be keto adapted. And I might be becoming a coach running the program for Team Keto, but this is what I'll be doing with the group, is just transitioning into nutritional ketosis. And then you are metabolically flexible. Then we can kind of find what we call your sweet spot. So Dr. Dan Plews, his program teaches you in EndurIQ the oxidation rates of carbohydrates and fat, and really the importance of being low carb, because too much carb intake from fructose, from overconsumption of carbohydrates, they can all cause gut distress, gut inflammation. And fructose can damage the mitochondria which is not healthy sugar. The body that has the fructose is in those drinks people get. The fructose is in those sport drinks, and look at what's in your gels and your bars. But it can cause inflammation in the gut and impact GI distress and cause halt to fat burning and cause weight gain. So you really want to look at what products you're taking when you do add some ingredients into your workout to add some strategic carb timing. Look at more source of UCAN, S Fuels, Vespa, really choose wisely so you're not over consuming the wrong type of carbohydrates. So you want to increase your rate of fat burning. So we don't have the strategic carb timing helps us, but you don't need as much carbohydrates. It's more glycogen sparing, the more efficient you are at burning fat during exercise, training, and racing. So Dr. Dan Plews and EndureIQ's protocol work together with S Fuels for the right products that people can have a good, healthy, happy gut when they're exercising, don't have the GI distress, sticking with maltodextrin during racing instead of fructose. And you're increasing the fat metabolism by changing what you eat, when, how, and why, as I say. And you're preserving the endogenic, oh my gosh, I can't say it. Your carb stores during training and racing, critical to performance. So you're holding those glycogen storage. You're not going to tap into them as early. So using carbohydrates only when you really need them as you're doing a race. And Dr. Dan Plews talks about saving them in triathlon. You'll kind of have them on the bike, and then you are easier to go. You're fueled up for the run. So interesting information you can learn from Dan on his interviews and their website. Oxidation rates limit the amount of carbohydrates you consume during racing, which can often cause GI distress, right? We've all been there. That's why we're here, because we know it doesn't work. So there's more information on fasting. I just wanted to slide here that Thomas DeLauer had last year about the hormesis when you're fasting too much. So I think it's important to know as athletes that the fasting information out there doesn't necessarily know your workout schedule and your stress schedule and your sleep schedule. So really look at what intensity workout you're doing, when it's appropriate to do the different types of fasting. So if you can find this Fasting Zones by Thomas DeLauer, he has 5 zones that talk about when is a small amount of fasting. I think for athletes, basically what I'm becoming more aware of, 12 hours, it should be normal. Overnight dinner to breakfast, that should be just normal, not really extended fasting, but that should be your norm. And then up to 15 hours is good for athletes. More than that, you need to match it. If you're going longer, why are you going for longer fast? Because we get benefits from cell autophagy and fat burning doing this type of training, and strength training, short intensity interval training, and lifting heavy weights. Remember, chronic cardio is not good. We want to do more strength training and HIIT training and less of this stuff, ideally, unless you have a race. But really looking at placing a longer fast in, if you're doing one maybe once a month on a non-workout day, but you still need to recover. So it's not really ever a good time to do a longer fast, water only fast. I say bone broth fasting is going to be more beneficial for my athletes, because when you're fasting or when you're not exercising, you're recovering. So if you do a day of just water, are you helping your body repair and rebuild? I don't know. Depends on the person. So fasting variations is important. And let's hop down fat as your fuel source. So how to be fat adapted athlete. You can listen to my podcast. It's not a one size fits all approach, but let's look at using exercise as a hormetic stressor. Strength training is a really important part of our training. Doing hot cold therapy, fasted morning walk outside, those are all great for fat loss. But then during exercise, we want to train our body more efficient. So I want you to stop looking at the slides because I'm going to skip down them again. But I really want to look at this. Paul Larson talked about with Maffetone years ago when I got into my adrenal exhaustion. And my book, I wrote my story in my book, Life is Not a Race, It is a Journey, to help you, because you're similar to me probably if you're listening to this and you're still listening after being in this video for a while, you might be ambitious overachiever as I was, the old me, and that I still can be. I have to always know when to push stop, pause, reset. So looking at the HP axis system and being fit and unhealthy. Good information from Maffetone and Larson in a study. So testing and not guessing with Dutch test, with a NutriSense, a CGM, with a gut test and micronutrient test or Zoomers to find out what's going on inside these hidden internal stressors. So doing testing, metabolic efficiency testing, is really important to know for your training, being metabolic flexibility. But if we're not identifying those hidden sources of internal stress, you may still be having issues and being in a catabolic state where you're breaking down your muscle. So you might be that skinny fat type that you're doing too much cardio and you're not building muscle, you're breaking down, and you're just speeding up the aging process. So looking at all this information on fat metabolism on my ebooks is really important, and testing with the Pinoy metabolic test or use Maffetone type of method, the 180 minus age. Just know when you're overtraining and know when to do a rest week, as I did the past week. I got off the cruise. I had my HRV and heart rate were all screwed up, and body temperature, and I have a cold. And so I really had to just walk this week instead of run and take a break. So using Maffetone method is really helpful if you can't do testing. So that's 180 minus your age. It works. And then test monthly, a 3-mile test. You're seeing what's going on at that pace. So the benefits of using this Maffetone method, which now everyone's calling zone 2, is this max aerobic function heart rate. So your maximum, if I did your test, where are you burning the peak fat? Oxidizing the most fat and the highest amount of calories, and staying below that metabolic crossover point where you are burning carbs more than fat. So we want to figure out those ranges. There's multiple benefits. So figuring out this with the test is what I would do if you're able to come to me and get tested. But using your body to be a fat burning machine as an endurance athlete will help you with the aging process, not being a sugar burner, but learning how to train. A lot of it's nutrition, not just exercise. So I used to always focus on how I was training, and then I got into the zone diet, and then into low carb, and then into keto, and in fasting. Now I'm focusing on protein. So low intensity is good, zone 2 we call it, but that HIIT training is really important as well. So it's more that 80-20 philosophy that you're spending 80% of the time zone 2, and then 20% of the time you're doing HIIT training. But what I'm trying to teach you all now is HIIT training is not just staying up high heart rate. It's going up 20, 30 seconds. Maybe you do zone 4, it's a minute, 2 minutes max. You're coming down to zone 1. So you want to make sure you're doing it properly, or else it's not HIIT training. So importance of interval training, all on these slides. You can get more information from Dan Plews and Paul Larson and all these people rethinking the role of fat oxidation during high intensity interval training. So really making sure you're not overtraining and under recovery, doing the black hole, no pain, no gain type of training, that zone 3. So that's why I really wanted to invest in Pinoy metabolic testing kit to teach athletes. Zone 2 is here for you. This is your zone 4, zone 5. This is how much you need to train here. So looking at that fat fuel during exercise, how many calories you're burning, how many fat calories, really figuring out your training program and your nutrition program, but also how are you managing your stress? Because if you watch my previous videos and podcast episodes on chronic stress impacts all of this. All of this goes away if you are stressed out. You're going to be burning glucose. So look at your diet. It doesn't mean zero carb. It means real food, ancestral health, primal health, teaching your body, prioritize protein and healthy fats come with that protein. So check out optimal fat metabolism. Fat is your fuel from Peter. The faster study everyone goes by, but it wasn't done on women. So until someone can do the faster study on women, we should just know that's ideal for men. So we know fats are natural ancestral health preferred fuel source. And if you're going longer as fuels go longer, fuel plan is going to help you if you are more efficient at burning fat. So we can test that. So let me know if you want your metabolism test and analyze your breathing. If you are efficient at getting the oxygen in, you can learn a lot from the OFM pyramid. Another great example, becoming so-called fat adapted, metabolically flexible, looking at nutrient dense foods, not counting calories, working on your stomach, your organ, digesting food properly, and your gut health. Your training and lifestyle, I call it the holistic method. You cannot out exercise poor nutrition habits, and you cannot out supplement poor stress management, poor sleep, hygiene routine, poor daily lifestyle habits, how you start the day, end the day. So really check that out. So how can you improve fat burning? If you can't come over and test with me, we'll do the Maffetone type of max aerobic function heart rate, add in some true sprint workouts, and try adding in strategic carb timing as some sweet potatoes with butter with your steak, or a russet potato. We made twice baked potatoes and really grilling the skin and bacon fat and having some spices or onions on it, and add a little bacon and some chopped chicken or steak is good. A ground beef or something really works good. And then experiment eating or not eating before workout. It depends on the workout. I usually just have coffee and a packet or two of Element in my water, LMNT. So look at unsweetened. I don't really like all this sweetener stuff. I'd rather people do unsweetened and not crave sweetness. So if you're finding yourself always craving these sweet drinks, work on that. Have some apple cider vinegar and water. Get rid of the sweet cravings. Have unsweetened options. So some notes here you can go over. Why not eat carbs over fat? Well, there's lots of things on that you can hear about, but it's not saying carbs are evil. It's all the processed foods, the vegetable oils, the garbage, and people just eating way too much. So if you're eating all day, you're grazing. If you can't go breakfast to lunch, lunch to dinner without snacking, you probably didn't eat enough fat and protein. So if you have GI problems, because maybe you're having too many carbs before workout. So look at your fuel plan. Let me know if you have questions, but look at your vegetable oils, look at metabolic typing, doing your blood sugar testing, look at your genetics, and look at how to eat. Figure out what works best for you. A lot of my friends, everyone's doing strict carnivore. I hate the word keto carnivore, but just eat real food, prioritize protein, ancestral health, or as Dr. Ken Berry calls it, the proper human diet. So check out S Fuels, get a discount on that one too with the low carb athlete, and you can learn more. Vespa, S Fuels, I used to always use Ukion, but check out more on my website, and hopefully that can help get you started. But ideally, test and not guess, right? See ya.